Clarion was one of the most successful missions conducted by the 8th Air Force. Clarion was designed to give the German transportation system a paralyzing blow with the minimum loss to ourselves. For a considerable length of time, we worked on plans which would most effectively disrupt the flow of men and materials to the fighting fronts by conducting a series of attacks against vital points in the German transportation system. We knew that if sufficient damage could be done in 1, 2, or 3 successive days, the immediate disruption and the paralysis that would follow such attacks would have a material bearing on the fighting on all German fronts. On first consideration, the best way to accomplish this would be to attack large rail centers such as Hamm, Kassel, Frankfurt, Leipzig, Berlin, or scores of others. But these yards are large. For example, Hamm is almost 2.5 miles long and about 1/2 mile wide. They're so large that any one of them would absorb anywhere from 1/3 to all of the effort of the 8th Air Force on any one operation. Furthermore, they are so numerous that our desired objective could not be achieved in 2 or 3 days. In other words, operations against these yards are really of a long-term character. The long-term effect is gained by destroying the railroad station, repair facilities, signal equipment, as well as military supplies that may be in the rolling stock in the yard at the time of attack. We knew that the Germans had a limited number of repair trains, and we believed that if we could disrupt his secondary rail centers between western and central Germany at some 40 or 50 points, we would severely tax his capability of making early repairs. We therefore felt that attacking the secondary rail centers would give us greater promise of attaining an immediate effect against his entire transportation system. We also appreciated the fact that the heavy anti-aircraft defenses at these secondary rail centers was almost nil, and therefore we would keep our losses at a minimum and would also be given greater latitude in bombing altitude. When the weather forecast on the night of 21st of February indicated 2 successive days of good weather, the plan was put into operation by Schaeff and Ustav. 43 primary targets lying within the area bounded by Nuremberg, Hamburg, and Berlin had already been selected. They were selected on the basis of their importance within the German transportation system, and successful attacks against them would disrupt and interdict the rail lines in an area of 30,000 square miles. The next morning, Washington's birthday, a force of 1,372 heavy bombers, escorted by 677 fighters, went in to attack 25 of the assigned primaries. However, due to weather conditions in the target areas of the 3rd Air Division, 7 of the primary targets were abandoned in favor of 11 secondary targets, also marshalling yards. In all, the 8th Air Force attacked 29 targets, dropping a total of 3,895 tons of bombs. Good navigation resulted in the bombers and fighters making good their planned routes and rendezvous. Northheim marshalling yards. 48 bombers dropped approximately 125 tons on the Northheim marshalling yards. Numerous patterns burst squarely on the yards at several points. Lines were cut in numerous places, and the rolling stock facilities and junctions were heavily damaged. Bamberg marshalling yards. The Bamberg yards were bombed through 10/10 of cloud by 64 bombers, which dropped 50 500-pounders on the targets. The results were unobserved due to cloud coverage. ANSBACH marshalling yards. 420 tons of bombs were dropped on the ANSBACH yards by 143 bombers with good to very good results. The yards at Stendal. 73 bombers dropped 250 tons of GP bombs on the Stendal marshalling yards with direct hits on a large engine roundhouse observed in addition to at least 120 hits on the rail lines and installations. 4 explosions were seen, and as a large storage area was heavily hit, severe damage must have been done. Large fires in this area were observed many hours later. Wittenberg marshalling yards. At least 90 hits on the rail lines and embankments were observed on the yards at Wittenberg, which was attacked by 72 bombers, blanketing the area with 216 tons of bombs. The yards and a major highway running parallel to them were severely damaged as shown in later reconnaissance pictures. LUDWIGSLUST marshalling yards. The main station at LUDWIGSLUST and large storage buildings nearby received direct hits and were seen burning by the 48 bombers which dropped 136 tons in this area. 70 hits on the rail lines, derailed railroad cars, and 2 rail bridges were also severely damaged. ELLIGEN marshalling yards. The marshalling yards at ELLIGEN received 250 tons of bombs from 73 bombers. 6 concentrations fell in the target area. 325 bursts were seen on the rail lines, and 4 intense fires were started, including the roundhouse and a large warehouse which received direct hits. 8 explosions were observed, and the damage was severe. The yards at LUNEBERG. The marshalling yards at LUNEBERG were hit by 39 bombers, which dropped 115 tons. 3 concentrations fell in the target area. 200 bursts hit the rail lines and installations, including the roundhouse and large warehouses. 2 rail bridges and 1 road bridge were hit, and there was an intense explosion among oil tankers in the yards. In the attacks on the following day, February 23rd, 1,211 heavy bombers attacked a total of 18 primary targets, including those that were weathered in the day before. Accompanied by 492 fighters, the heavies dropped 3,316 tons of bombs on these targets. ELLIGEN marshalling yards. 25 bombers laid down 70 tons of bombs on the ELLIGEN yards. 120 bursts were seen in the traffic center, which caused severe damage. CRAILSHEIM marshalling yards. 300 rail cars were in the target area at CRAILSHEIM when hit by 114 tons of bombs from 52 bombers. Railway cars and the main lines through the center of the yard were heavily hit, as were adjoining warehouses. The damage should be most severe. WURZBURG marshalling yards and railway station. The target was the WURZBURG station and marshalling yards, as well as the main yards 22 miles southwest of Schweinfurt. In the station area, 260 bursts were seen. 2 roundhouses, 2 turntables, the station building, and repair shops all received several direct hits, and the damage was severe. 120 bursts were observed in the main yards. 70 direct hits on the rail lines at the main switch point caused severe damage, with direct hits also damaging 10 adjoining factory and repair buildings. Statistics for the 2 attacks are impressive. In the 2 days, a total of 2,583 bombers put down 7,211 tons of bombs, all 500-pounders, with good to very good results. The 1,409 fighters escorting the bombers immobilized 104 locomotives and destroyed 31 oil tank cars, 55 railway vans, and 35 supply trucks, in addition to 13 planes destroyed in the air and 30 more on the ground, with many more damaged. Although this presentation deals only with the 8th Air Force, Clarion was a combined operation,
carefully planned and timed to integrate the efforts of all air strength available, with the 1st Tactical Air Force, the 9th Air Force, 2nd Tactical Air Force, and the RAF Bomber Command also participating on 22 February. Careful planning of routes and selection of targets, as well as accurate weather forecasting, made it possible for the bombers to attack at relatively low altitudes. Of the 2,583 bombers sortied, only 1 was lost to enemy aircraft, 2 to flak, and 4 for other reasons. Of the 1,409 escorting fighters, not 1 was lost in combat, although 5 were lost to light anti-aircraft while strafing, and 15 to other reasons. Considering the number of aircraft dispatched, the amount of damage done, and the few losses sustained, recent photo reconnaissance indicates that this mission was as successful as had been planned.